Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Varsha Deshpande and I welcome you to this brief video where I would be talking to you about the doctrine of severability. Now the doctrine of severability is something that we relate to Article 13 of the Constitution, and if we focus carefully on the words used by Article 13 both in Clause 1 and Clause 2, what this article tries to tell us is that look, any kind of a law inconsistent with a fundamental right goes away as void. But when clauses 1 and 2 make this stipulation, in both the clauses it tells us somewhere that the law doesn't go away as void in totality, but it goes away as void only to the extent of inconsistency or to the extent of contravention. Now, what this is trying to tell us is that, you don't waste away the whole of the law enacted by the legislature by reason of its contravention with fundamental rights. You're trying to save the effort of the legislature that has gone into the making of the law, because lawmaking through the legislature is, as all of us know, a very onerous and a time-consuming procedure. So when you find an inconsistency in a law with fundamental rights, 13 tells you that the law goes away as void, but it tells you that it goes away as void only to the extent of inconsistency. Now, from these words that you find in the text of Articles 13.1 and 2, 13.1 uses the words to the extent of inconsistency, 13.2 uses the words to the extent of contravention. From these words which you see appearing in the text of clauses 1 and 2, you derive something called as the doctrine of severability. Now the word sever literally means to separate. So what does the doctrine of severability tell us? It tells us the simple point that look, whenever a law is inconsistent with a fundamental right, then that much part of the law which has that inconsistency. So suppose there's a statute enacted by the parliament and out of the entire statute, it's only sections 18 and 19 of the law which are inconsistent with fundamental rights. Now, what does Article 13 tell you about such a law? It says the law goes away as void, but only to the extent of inconsistency. So only sections 18 and 19 of the law will become inconsistent, but the rest of the law can still remain valid and operative. So what do you do here? You sever, you separate sections 18 and 19 of the law from the remainder of the statute. You say that look, 18 and 19 go away as void, and the rest of the law, however, still remains valid and operative. Now, this is the basic meaning that severability brings to us, that you be able to separate, to sever the valid from the invalid portions. So let the invalid part go away, but let the remainder of the statute still remain valid and operative. So, this is basically the doctrine of severability is basically a doctrine of public policy, which, as I said before, save the law as much as possible. So the invalid portion goes away, but the valid portion remains operative in its own capacity. However, let's understand the point that when you're talking about this severing of the invalid from the valid part, sometimes you would come across statutes which are structured in such a manner that the invalid portion and the valid portion cannot really be meaningfully separated from each other. So, sometimes you could come across laws where those provisions which are inconsistent with fundamental rights, if you remove those portions from the statute, the remainder of the statute is incapable of standing by itself. You'd often realize that when you remove the invalid part, whatever remains by itself is not in a position to fulfill the intention of the legislature that was there in making the law in the first place. So the reason for which you enacted the law, you're not able to fulfill that purpose when you remove the invalid portion from the valid portion. So, we set this as the fundamental position in the doctrine of severability, that only first step would be to remove that part of the law which is inconsistent and allow the remainder of the statute to be operative. But sometimes when the valid and the invalid portions are so intricately connected to each other that it's impossible for you to sever the invalid part and allow the remainder of the statute to stand by itself. If that remainder of the statute cannot fulfill the purpose, cannot stand by itself alone, then in that case, what do? You declare the entire statute to be inoperative and void. Okay, so we say the first effort would be that, look, you want to save the law as much as possible, so remove the invalid part and let the rest of it operate. But sometimes, the connection between the valid and the invalid portions is so intricate that it becomes virtually impossible for you to segregate that, to separate that, or to sever the two of them. Then in that case, what happens is the whole of the law goes away as invalid or goes away as void. Now, this is something I believe which is directly comparable to our own human body. So suppose, something goes wrong with somebody's hand, for example, and the doctor gives an opinion that, look, this is not something that can be repaired and we need to ampute the hand, right? So you have to separate the hand from the remainder of the body. So what you go ahead to do is ampute the hand and the rest of the body still remains operative. So there you're able to do it. But try and look at an example where a person's brain is not functioning well, or the person's heart is not functioning well, and the doctor tells you that, look, sever the brain. Can you really do that? We can't. So in these kind of cases, where that separation, that severing is not possible, there then if your brain is gone, the whole of the body goes. Right? So that's the same analogy that you apply in case of statutes as well. So sever where you can, separate where you can, but where it's not possible for you to do that, there the entire statute must go away as invalid. Now that's the simple point that the doctrine of severability tries to bring home. And remember, this is a doctrine that applies equally to both pre as well as post-constitutional laws. So regardless of whether you're talking about a pre-constitutional law that's inconsistent with Part 3 or a post-constitutional law that is inconsistent, the first rule will be where you can separate, you do separate. But where it's not possible for you to separate, there the whole of the law goes away as invalid. So let's look at a number of examples where the court actually does apply this doctrine of severability. So for example, let's look at the case of Shreya Singhal versus Union of India, where section 66A of the Information Technology Act was declared by the court to be unconstitutional. So what did we do there? You separated section 66A from the remainder of the Information Technology Act, and you said 66A goes away as void, but the remainder of the statute still continues to remain in operation. Or let's look at the more contemporary and popular cases like Joseph Shine versus Union of India, for example, which declared section 497 of the Indian Penal Code to be unconstitutional. So remember, section 497 was a provision that dealt with the offense of adultery. And in Joseph Shine versus Union of India, the court declared that to be void because it was inconsistent with your rights under Article 14, Article 21 and stuff like that. So what did we do there? we severed 497. You didn't say that the whole of your IPC is declared unconstitutional. You only severed section 497 and said that because there's an inconsistency in this provision with certain defined fundamental rights in part 3, you separated 497 and allowed the remainder of your Indian Penal Code to remain valid and operative. And mind you, Indian Penal Code is a pre-constitutional law in our country. It's a code that was made by Lord Macaulay for India while the Britishers were still ruling us. So that's a pre-constitutional law which had a provision which today's court declared to be inconsistent with certain fundamental rights. So what did you do there? You applied the doctrine of severability, severed section 497 and allowed the remainder of Indian Penal Code to continue as valid and operative. So you could give several such examples where the court does apply the doctrine of severability. Let's look at the anti-defection law, for example. Quijote Holohorn's case declared part 7 of the anti-defection law, para 7 of the 10th schedule, to be unconstitutional because it violated judicial review as a part of the basic structure. So the court there again applies severability and says sever para 7 from the remainder of the anti-defection law and let the rest of the law remain valid. So these are several cases where the court applies the doctrine of severability, trying to save the constitutionality of the rest of the law and declaring those provisions only which contravene certain fundamental rights to go away as void and inoperative. So this is a doctrine that we study under Article 13 of the Constitution that derives from the use of these words to the extent of inconsistency or to the extent of contravention that are used respectively in clauses 1 and 2 of Article 13. I sincerely hope this video has been useful to you to understand the doctrine of severability. Please do write in the comments section of what you feel about this video. Thank you very much for watching it.
For more such informative topics on constitutional law, please like this video and subscribe our channel.